Hello, everybody. My name is Milton Gay. I'm by training a clinical social worker. I'm actually one of the people with your employee assistance program through Support Link that if you called and said, hey, I need to come talk to somebody, I'm one of the people to whom you might be referred. So again, I'm just one of many, many people in your network. And here, as we celebrate Mental Health Month, what better time for us to talk about building better mental health? And I think the title in itself sort of gives a really important message in itself that it's, yes, about mental health, and we're going to talk about that as we go along, but it's something that we continue to build. It's not something that you either have or don't have, or that it just is what it is. It's something that we actually can work on and we actually can make better. So we're going to talk about that, and hopefully we'll make this as interactive as we can. My preference is always that when I do a seminar like this, that we make it as interactive as possible. As I understand today, we're not going to be able to have live question and answer, but if you would, as you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box, and those will be, Angela will be your voice and bring your questions. And so that here's your opportunity to ask maybe questions that you've wanted to get answered about some of the mental health topics we're going to be talking about as we go through this today. So I please request that you do ask questions and bring your comments. You know, I can bring you all kinds of information. Your questions, your comments help make this presentation be really relevant to you and to the situations in your life. So that's what we want this to be. The purpose of this slide, the EAP wants to make a statement out front that while the slides are provided by Support Link, that the discussions of them, the comments, the stories, those will be me, and will have any of my biases rather than theirs in it. So just to know that from the start. What we want to have you accomplish in this session today, we're going to talk about what mental health really is and why it's such an important thing for us to talk about. And you may find for many of you, what mental health is may be different from what you thought about coming into our session today. We're going to talk about how stressors and life situations can impact our mental health. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about some simple ways that you can help build or improve your own mental health as we go along. So let's start with that whole concept of what is mental health. We've got all these words that we can say. It's contentment, it's sense of purpose, it's all of those things. I don't need to read the slide to you. And yes, all of those are parts of mental health. But what is mental health? And in order to explain that, I think I want to talk about a parallel and see if it makes some sense for you. When most people think about mental health, they think about mental illness, right? Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, all anxiety disorders, all those different diagnoses that people can have. But mental health is more than that. And let me tell you the parallel. When you think about physical health, what do you think about, right? Physical health isn't just about not having measles or diabetes. Physical health is, how do we help ourselves be as physically healthy as we can? So physical health isn't something that you either have or don't have. It's something that we work, we work on improving. It's something that we can get better at. It's something that we can develop habits that support. The same is true, all of those things, about mental health. Mental health is not just about avoiding diseases, it's about how do we help ourselves be as happy and healthy as we mentally as we possibly can. So when we talk about mental health, please understand, yes, there are aspects that have to do with diseases and illnesses, just like in physical health. But just like in physical health, where, by concentrating on the things that we eat and getting exercise and all of those habits that we know of that help keep us healthy or maximize our health, our physical health, the same is true with mental health. The difference is that mental health is predominantly, as they say, between our ears. I think the place that we most find it is, if you'll think about it, in the relationship that you have with yourself. When you talk to yourself, and by the way, let's get that on the table to begin with. People that say, oh, if you talk to yourself, that's a bad sign. That means you're crazy. No, everybody talks to themselves. Okay. You talk to yourself, right? And let me give you an example. Let's say you're going to, I love to play tennis. So let's say I'm playing tennis and the ball is coming to me and I'm saying, watch the ball, rack it back, swing through, now follow through up. Who's talking? I am. Who am I talking to? Myself. We do that all the time. There are situations where something will happen around you and you'll react to it and you'll go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Or sometimes we may say it as stupid or whatever we say. So the issue becomes not do we talk to ourselves, but what's that relationship that we have with ourselves in those conversations? For example, do you treat yourself as someone worthy of your own respect? So that, let's say you make a mistake or let's say you knock over a glass of water. What do you say to yourself in that moment? Do you call yourself an ugly name? Do you treat yourself disrespectfully? Do you treat yourself respectfully? Do you use it as, well, okay, going forward, maybe I need to think more about this in doing that? How do you manage those situations? So as we look at that in terms of our feeling good about ourselves, our contentment, our self-esteem is part of the word that we use with that, our sense of purpose, our having a reason to get up in the morning, feeling like the things that we do are important and are accomplishing something that's important to us, our ability to deal with situations around us as they change, our ability to deal with stress, having relationships that tend to be mutually beneficial and to be good relationships. Are we able to do things in life and have that sense of balance? And one of the things that I love to do when I teach about balance, I have people stand up on their feet and lift one foot off the floor. So all your weight's on that other foot. Most people think about balance in terms of one static amount. But in truth, balance in life is balancing. So it's an active thing that we do of keeping the balance as we go through all these different things that we deal with. So getting balance is a huge part of mental health. Our self-esteem, what we think of ourselves, not what we present to other people, but when nobody's looking, between you and you, what do you think of you? And that's where we get into self-esteem and resilience. When life jumps up and hits us in the nose, how do we respond to that? And our ability to bounce back from that resilience. These are some of the examples of some of the aspects of mental health in terms of it's not you either do them or you don't, have them or don't. It's a matter of, well, how are you in that area right now? How are you dealing with those situations? So it's something that right now we can take a measurement of and say, okay, here's where it is right now. But it's also something that we can work on. It's something we can grow. It's something we can improve at. One of the things about every living creature, every living being, we're either in one of two states. We're either growing or we're dying. Stagnation, staying still, is kind of slow death anywhere in the animal kingdom, probably the plant kingdom too. So we're constantly growing. So I hope for everyone on this call that you are growing and trying to do something to keep yourself growing in some way every single day. It doesn't have to be drastic, it can be a little bit. Very famously, Nick Saban, the coach of the University of Alabama football team, is renowned as having, saying to his people on a regular basis that his goal for each practice is for everybody there to improve 1% over what they were coming to practice. Just improve 1%. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, does it? But if you think about it, if you do that every single day, it begins to add up pretty quickly. So as we're talking about mental health, think about it in terms of for yourself, what are the things that you can do to keep growing you and continue to earn your own respect day to day to day to day? And that's a good beginning in understanding about building even more positive mental health than you already have. This funny looking slide, I love this slide, actually, in a really interesting way, tells us a lot about the work of a German physiologist named Hans Selye, Selye, if you want to look him up. And Dr. Selye just turned the stress industry on its ear with his discoveries. Before Selye, everybody thought that stress was horrible and the enemy and to be avoided at all costs, and no stress is allowed. And the ultimate lifestyle would be to live totally stress-free. And what Selye's work showed us is actually that's not true. He found that actually every single one of us has a level of stress at which we perform at our absolute best. Now, it's different for different people, and it can be different at different times in your life. But think about it. You have a level of stress at which you perform at your best. When your life is at that level of stress, you perform at your best. So just to help you think through where that is, let's just for the argument, let's say there are 5 levels of stress. Obviously, there are multiple levels of stress, but for today, let's say there are 5. Everything totally calm, a little bit going on, a medium amount of stress, a lot going on, people that are easily bored, and all heck breaking loose. The question I want you to think about, at which of those levels do you perform at your absolute best? How many of you perform at your best when everything is just totally calm? How many like to have a little bit going on? How many like a medium amount of stress? How many of you are easily bored and like to have a lot going on? And how many aren't happy unless you're late for this because you're doing this and just going constantly, and that's when you're at your best? What Selye said is the important thing is for you to realize where your zone is and keeping yourself in that zone. He called it eustress, eustress, that in eustress, we actually perform at our best. And he said, and they paid him millions for this, folks, if you get more than that amount of stress, why, that's distressful. Duh, any of us didn't already know that and couldn't have shown him that for maybe 1 million, who knows? Anyway, but then he got really weird. He said, also, if you get less than that amount of stress, that's equally distressful. Anybody ever felt under stressed underutilized, not enough to do? Somebody put in the chat box, what do you call that feeling that you have when you feel understressed or underutilized? What's that feeling?
We have some people chiming in saying empty, useless, worthless, bored, not needed, disempowered,
Those are
boredom.
all great answers. The answer I was looking for actually is bored, but I think all those others are true actually. So I'm going to ask a second question, and let me tell you, it has the same answer. Okay. The second question is, when we're working with people that have alcohol and drug issues, and there are people that, in talking about their alcohol and drug, when they look back, what is the most common feeling that people get take alcohol and drugs to manage? Now, most people would say stress or secondary fear, and those are up there. But the number one that we get most often, believe it or not, is boredom. Isn't that interesting? More to what Celia was saying, how damaging it is when we feel understressed, underutilized, not purposeful. You get the idea. So the idea in managing stress is to find your peak performance zone, your eustress zone, and try to keep yourself there so that if things get too high, we can do that for a while, but then we start burning out. If things get too low, we can do that for a little while, but for an extended period of time, we do start burning out from that as well. So, interesting way to think about how stress affects us in terms of our mental health. Now, stress affects us in many, many different ways. So that every single day, there are ways that we have to manage stresses. It's not just one place, like pressure at work or demands, from a family. There are all those things. So here are some examples that may be stressors that you experience. Difficulty or poor communication with your spouse or partner, difficult customers, difficult coworkers, a difficult boss. I'm sure not here ever, but in a lot of places they would say that. Finding time for exercise. It's just tough to find some time to do exercise, to do something to help with burning off some of that stress. Worries about money. I live in the Atlanta area, and wow, traffic here is crazy. So you tell me whether traffic, being on time, running late, getting places you got to be is an issue for you, but I'm betting it probably is. Projects, deadlines. Sleep is such an important thing, and when we don't get it, it makes everything else we do less effective, less efficient. And yet, so many people don't prioritize it. And so, when we don't get enough of it, it impacts us in ways we're not even aware of. And then, what about the people that are so committed to taking care of everybody else? No time for me time, no time to recharge, no time to do the things that help you get back to where you need to be. So, all these different situations that we deal with, we got to find that place to put us in our zone, our eustress zone, so that we manage the things we need to manage, but we have to take care of ourselves in the process. Some of the other situations we deal with, right? Death, and I'm going to add, or illness of family members and friends can affect us. Illnesses that we experience ourselves, and loss of our physical health, or inability to get around and do things that you do. I had an injury recently, so I wasn't able to play tennis, and realized how much hitting that yellow fuzzy ball is part of my stress management program. And when I couldn't do that, the way that profoundly affected so many other parts of my life really was surprising to me. Divorces, breakups, or in today's world, um, relationships can break up over something like as trends, as much as people move today, having friends that get a job in a different city and move away, or get a promotion and move elsewhere, or in whatever way, people, we have to constantly be adding to our social networks because people move, people leave, and much more than in previous generations. Uh, Crime, accidents, disasters. And I would add to that, not just the ones that we experience. Uh, our media today is so much at shining a light on every problem that happens everywhere, uh, that it uh, traumatizes us almost every day. So as we're dealing, we can be victims of crime in that way, seeing all these things that are happening around the country, around the city, around the world, but that we still have feelings about. Betrayal, infidelity, someone not being true to their relationship with you. And of course, job loss, or sometimes even significant job changes where what we used to do, we're going to do it differently now from going forward. Then there are long-term stressors, dealing with not having enough money. And again, poverty is, there's a certain level of money that we need in order to get by. Beyond that, um, it's a matter of choices that we make. But there is a certain level at which we need to get that much in order to be able to get by. Chronic illness, financial strain, relationships that aren't supportive but actually go all the way to being abusive. Um, I've got someone that has raised a hand. I don't know if you can ask a question, if you want to unmute and ask the question, or if you want to put it in the chat box. Distance from families, again, as mobile as we are, moving from place to place, dealing with long-term issues, long-term illnesses, dealing with addiction, dealing with family members that have issues. So there are lots and lots of stresses that we deal with. So keeping ourselves in a good place, even while we're dealing with these difficult realities, is really part of the job of having um, a strong mental health. So, how do people deal with all these stresses? Sometimes we deal with it by running, 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 feeling like a hamster on a wheel, but never feeling like we get much done. And some of that may be because there's just so much on the plate that we're just doing all that we can do. And then when we finish, all we see is what hasn't been done. Sometimes we try to self medicate, whether with alcohol, with nicotine, with other drugs, to see if that'll calm things down. It may make us feel calmer, but in terms of helping us get a handle on the situations, really those are not designed very well to help us do that. Trying to do too many things at once, multitasking. And what our research that we actually have some pretty good research on multitasking now that says in order to multitask, what people are training themselves to do is basically to be superficial. And the better we get at it, the more difficult time we tend to have taking deep dives on things. So that when someone who's really good at multitasking and used to multitasking is required to do something very, very detailed, they frequently become very anxious and very frustrated very quickly because that's no longer in their wheelhouse. So there's some pluses, but there's some minuses in doing that. Sleeping too little, sleeping too much, sometimes both. We've got some really good research now about sleep. And part of what we found out is, by the way, if you, for every night you fail to get enough sleep, and we'll talk later on about what enough sleep is, um, it takes approximately that many nights of getting a full night's sleep to get you back recharged. So if you don't get enough sleep one night and you get enough sleep the next night, you'll be recharged the following day. If you go 2 nights not getting enough sleep, it's going to take 2 nights of getting enough sleep to get you fully recharged. 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 5 for 5. The good news, however, it appears that if you've had 3,783, I made up that number, days of not getting enough sleep, and you get 5 or 6 nights that are full nights of sleep, you will recharge yourself pretty much, mostly. Okay. So it's not too late, but getting your sleep stuff back together is going to be really, really important with many, many parts of your life. And also, what came out of the same research is that if you, like I used to do, burned your candle at both ends and didn't get enough sleep 5 days of the week and figured I'll make it up on the weekend, there is not enough sleep that you will get in the weekend that you will be recharged on Monday morning. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Think of it that for every day you fail to get enough sleep, it's going to take that many days of getting enough sleep to get you back fully recharged. So, yeah, sleeping is such a huge part of all that we're talking about in terms of our physical and mental health. Speaking and eating too fast, speaking to try to get everything out because we're in a hurry, and then people don't understand as clearly and may not understand what you're doing. Eating too fast, which means that we're really not chewing up our food, so we're really not getting as much nutritional value as you would if you took your time. A great exercise to do, just a really simple thing. If when you get home, or if you've got somewhere around where you are at the office, just a slice of white bread, just plain white bread, and you put it in your mouth and start chewing it for a minute and a half without swallowing. Don't swallow, just keep chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing. Watch what's going to happen. Yes, it's going to turn into mush. That's a good thing. But the other thing you're going to notice is it's going to get sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. Because what you're really doing when you do that, you're actually using your teeth and your saliva to begin the process of digestion, breaking down the food, breaking down that bread into sugar, but breaking down your food so that by the time it gets to the stomach, it's already where it should be in the process, so the stomach can do its job, and then you get the maximum from what it is that you eat. When we toss stuff down, barely chewing it, yeah, well, we don't give the stomach the head start and sort of like, look out, stomach, here it comes. And the person that fails to benefit from that is you. So, a great exercise in mindfulness that I urge people to do in mindful eating is simply every bite that you take, no matter how small, chew it 25 times before swallowing. It may sound ridiculous, but what it will do in terms of a number of things, you'll find yourself filling up eating less food. You'll find yourself getting more satisfaction from the food that you're eating. And you'll probably also find that you're going to care more about the quality of the food that you eat. If it's going to be spending that much time in your mouth, you want it to really taste good. And you're going to notice that some of the stuff you've been woofing down, yeah, it wasn't so good. Working too much, working too long, dealing effectively with stress. Okay, all of those things are some of the things that we do in responding to stress. Now, I want to say it was probably 50 years ago that two researchers named Holmes and Ray came up with this study. So you're going to find some ridiculous stuff on it, like a mortgage of, what does it say, $20,000 or something like that. Um, what they wanted to do was to codify what would be some numbers of how daily things that people deal with affect them. And so they gave points to things that people deal with. And they said, if you in the past 12 months from today have experienced any of these things, then give yourself that many points. And what they found was the higher the points that people got, the more likely they were to have a stress related illness in the following year. So they were initially looking at how stress affects us. I'm not going to take time for us to do this questionnaire today. You have, as part of the handouts for this session, the workbook for this session, you've got a copy of this. Take some time and look it over and see how many points would you have? Because if you've got low points, then okay, then it's going to take less for you in terms of protecting yourself from that level of stress. But the higher the point value you find, the more helpful it's going to be for you to take extra care of yourself and managing your stresses going forward. So, what our research has shown us now about mental health is there are some specific keys that help us with managing mental health. We've touched on a few of them, but the first one is having social connection. All of us need people, need some kind of connection. We found that different people need different things from people. Some people need just someone to be there. Some people need someone to sound things out to. Some people need, you hear what I'm saying, just different things from different people. What is it that you need? Are you getting that? Are you putting together the kind of social network around you to help you get that? And one of the things that's really difficult in significant relationships like marriages is when people feel like that one person is going to fulfill every one of my social needs. That puts really dangerous pressures on the relationship and usually doesn't work. Usually that person can provide a lot and the partnership that's needed, but some of those social needs need to come from outside the relationship in addition to the relationship. So having a group of friends, having a group of, whether it's being part of a team, and for me, that's another place where tennis comes in, being part of a tennis team. I've got places to belong, places I have to be, and people to work with, people to complain to, all of those things that come with that. So social connection in whatever way that's important to you is one of them. Staying active, keeping yourself growing is one of those things we're finding that's true at every age. Interesting, when I talk to people who have retired, the financial aspect is one aspect people look at, but one they rarely take as much time to think about is what are they going to do with their lives? And the people that say, "Oh, I'm going to go play golf," that'll last about a month, and then they'll go, "Well, yeah, I've enough golf. I don't have any reason to get up in the morning." So planning for what gives me a sense of purpose, what gives me a sense of reason to be, a sense of something that I'm accomplishing, that I make a difference. All of those things, that part of staying active is something that's huge and never goes away. It's something to always keep as part of your life. Managing stress, we've mentioned all through this that there are all kinds of situations at work, at home, in the community, and how we, in an ongoing fashion, manage those stresses, whether it's with time management, whether it's with better communication. But how do we manage those things? Having a healthy diet, remembering that mental health and physical health are not totally separate from each other. Our mind is part of our brain is part of our body. Our mind and our body are not totally separate. So eating in a healthy way that lets us think clearly and helps us be able to do the things that we need to do effectively and efficiently. Quality sleep, I've already mentioned a little bit of. Let me talk we'll get to that, but um, sleep is such an underappreciated, but really, really important part of our lives. And as I mentioned in passing before, having meaning and purpose in our lives is tremendous. Having a sense that I'm accomplishing something. There's something important that I'm doing. So, how do we build each of these things? Number one, with the social connection. Instead of waiting for people to contact you, go ahead and initiate, especially if you're feeling a lack or that that social network is not where it needs to be. Go ahead and start reaching out. Go ahead and start making calls. Maybe invite coworkers to go have lunch with you instead of waiting for them to contact you. Maybe set up something that people want to do after work. Maybe join a tennis team. I don't know. But finding ways to make new connections and to build on the connections that you have. Instead of sending things out just to multiple people, try to connect one on one and one on two as much as you can. And being part of a group, and I don't mean necessarily like a group therapy group, I mean like a team or a group that does something, whether it's, I have a friend that joined a, a, a meetup group that he met through the Meetup app, where they go, it's called the Chinese food group, and it's ironic because they go to restaurants each week, everything except Chinese for whatever reason. But the idea is they have something to talk about, to review and the restaurant and talk about it. And in the course of getting to know each other after you've seen the same people 2 or 3 times, it begins to be a place that people are familiar with each other and can start talking about other things. So all kinds of creative ways we can be parts of groups. If think about what hobbies you like, what you enjoy. If, let's say, you like riding a bicycle, pretty much every bicycle shop around has, usually at least once a week, some kind of a neighborhood bike ride where people um, get together and go out and do things together. Um, so find groups, find ways that you can participate, find ways that you can connect with other people. And staying active, being involved with people helps in many, many ways. Obviously, activity helps your physical health because you're moving. That helps your mental well-being, increases your energy. You get physically tired, helps you sleep. So just it helps in numerous ways. So some ideas, some things to help with building that. Start now, don't put it off. Aim for 30 minutes a day and try various things. My wife and I went to a salsa class last week. Boy, I wasn't aware how much that can take it out of you. So I mean, there's so many different things that you can try. And people like to use the word exercise. So in exercise, people think about going to a gym and having to do things at the gym. Gyms are nice, gyms are a great possibility, but my experience in a gym is the only socialization that goes on in most gyms is, excuse me, are you finished with that machine? And that's not terribly helpful. So what are some other kinds of activities that you could do that you really, and start with things that you would enjoy or that you've always thought about, I'd really like to try such and such. I understand pickleball is a huge thing that people of all levels of physical ability can do. That's another one to try. So what would work best for you? In terms of managing stress, I think we've already talked about a number of things, but remember the importance of connecting with other people. Use your senses to see how you feel about stuff. Instead of just reacting with emotions, stop and what's going to help me with getting to whatever my desired outcome is? How do I move things forward? Get out of the crisis mode and get to how do I get accomplished what it is that I'm trying to accomplish? Make sure you take time to recharge you. Okay. Remember to relax and be good to yourself. One of the things in managing stress that I always try to remember is for any of you that have ever flown in an airplane, before the plane can leave, they have to do that safety talk. And toward the end of that safety talk, they're required to tell you about that, if the air gets sucked out of the plane, that oxygen masks are going to drop down. And they say people traveling with small children should put whose mask on first? Yeah, your own. Why? Isn't that selfish? No. If something happens to you, there's no one there for the child. So it's really important that we do take care of our own basic needs so that we have the wherewithal to be able to help people. And for you working in a hospital setting, that's particularly important to remember. Your whole job is taking care of other people, making sure that you are in a place where you're at your best to be able to do that is a huge, huge piece to remember. Healthy eating. And when I'm not sure I'm going to agree 100% with everything that the Support Link has here. I don't know that it's necessary to avoid caffeine, but remember that caffeine can, number one, it can be dehydrating. So if you're using caffeine, make sure you do other things that really do hydrate you. And also remember that um, caffeine, in terms of keeping you awake, is fairly, or feeling the energy from it, is fairly short lasting. But in terms of the length of time it can affect your ability to sleep, in some studies has been shown to be up to 9 hours. So for me, I cut off my caffeine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, no caffeine beyond that point, because if I go beyond that, it can affect my ability to fall asleep at night. So if you are, pulling Red Bulls, late in your shift just to keep you going, and then you're having trouble sleeping at night, that may be part of the reason. So be careful with caffeine. Use it advisedly. Alcohol also, be careful. Alcohol makes people lose consciousness, but it only lets people that fall asleep after drinking alcohol only get to second level sleep. They don't get to the deep part of sleep that allows their bodies to recharge and does all kinds of healthy things for us. So you don't, no matter how quantity wise you've been sleeping, unless you have the periods in third and fourth level sleep, you don't get really fully recharged. So be careful of alcohol, especially as an issue, it can really impact your ability to sleep. Trans fats are a particular class, there are good fats and bad fats. The good fats are things like um, avocados and olive oils. And in the old story is that it's no longer true because they've caught up with it, but most of the fats that at room temperature turn hard are like that stuff that appears on top of last night's steak when you pull it out of the refrigerator. Those are some of the worst for you. Those are the ones that really help clog up your arteries and probably not the best. So be, learn about the good fats and the bad fats and try to bring that to your diet. A lot of the ingredients that were put into food as preservatives really don't necessarily have good effects on us. Not all, but many of them can have some pretty negative effects. Sugary snacks burn up pretty quickly and they taste great, but they frequently aren't terribly healthy. Refined carbs, which has to do with um, the difference between white bread, for example, or bleached flour, and whole grain, is where a whole grain has three parts. It has the husk on the outside called the bran. It has the new baby plant to be called the germ, and the white stuff that is there to the sugary stuff that's there to feed the plant till roots can bring in other nutrition, and that's called the endosperm. When you eat bleached flour, for example, or white rice, or anything that a grain that's not a whole grain, a refined grain, then what you are getting is only the endosperm. It's the whole grain gives you the fiber of the bran and gives you all of the grain. So that's why having whole grains is so much more healthy than having the refined grains. Fried foods, a friend of mine is famous for saying that why do people love fried foods? Because the grease is just too hot to drink. Um, the idea is that fried foods, yeah, it tastes great. The fat has this great way of holding on to flavors in such a wonderful way, but they, in many, many ways, are very, very harmful to us. So be careful, minimize how much you have of fried foods. But in today's world, we have air fryers where no oil is needed and you're able to do things in a much more healthy way. So many of the things that, I mean, we can, cook with healthy fats. We can have air fried foods instead of fried foods. And that alone can make tremendous differences in our diets and in our health. Then, of course, there are some of the positive things, the omega-3 oils, um, the, the the fish oils, the avocado oils, as I said, the olive oils, the positive ones, the nuts, flaxseed, and then vegetables, the leafy greens, especially fresh fruit, using those to bring different vitamins and minerals to your life. So there are lots of things that we can do with healthy eating. And let me add to that the chewing each bite for 25 chews. Try that. Watch what happens. Anybody that tells you that gives you a number, you should have 8 hours of sleep, you should have 9 hours of sleep, you should have 7 hours of sleep, you only need 6 hours. They're giving you a number to be convenient. The only real way to know if you are getting enough sleep is in the morning when you wake up. Do you wake up feeling energized, ready to take on the day? Or do you, oh, I can't get up? You have to hit the snooze another 12 times. Okay. By the way, the sleep that you get after you hit the snooze is virtually no good to you whatsoever. So, I mean, talk about wasteful time in your day. Any time that you're spending after you hit the snooze, you're not going to be sleeping long enough for it to really have a positive effect on you. So, ask yourself, how do I feel in the morning when I get up? If you feel energized and ready to take on the world, then you probably are getting enough sleep. If not, you're not. Other things that to look at is during the day, do you find yourself having a hard time staying awake in meetings, even boring trainings? If you're falling asleep, you probably aren't getting enough sleep. And the other one that's a really interesting indicator is at night when you go to bed. How long does it take after your head hits the pillow for you to fall asleep? The plus minus on that for healthy restfulness is about 10 to 15 minutes for you to actually fall asleep. If your head hits the pillow and you're out within a minute or two, you're probably sleep deprived. You're probably not getting enough sleep. Now, it's not guaranteed, but most probably. So use those to help you determine, am I getting enough sleep? And if not, get enough sleep and watch how that changes things. With patients in my office, very, very often, when they're in for stress management or anxiety, very often when we go through assessing their sleep and find that's not working, we have them take a week to get enough sleep. And you'll be amazed how often the other symptoms go away completely once they're properly rested. It's amazing how powerful that is. So learn ways to deal with your worry, whether it's writing a list, putting it aside, setting a time every day. Try relaxing activities as you get ready for bed. Make your room, your bed situation, your sleep comfortable. And remember that we sleep, right? We tend to sleep thinking at night. What's different at night? It's dark, it's cooler, and it's quiet. Try managing those three things so that if you have to sleep during the day or whatever it is with sleep, you manage those three things. It can be tremendously helpful in getting to sleep much more effectively. And try to stick to a schedule. If you're having difficulty with sleep, try as much as you can to go to bed at the same time every day and get up the same time every day, even on weekends. Sorry, folks. But if you're having trouble, those are things that can be really, really helpful. And then finding meaning and purpose in your work. Really put yourself into it, engage in the work. Don't just do it, but put yourself in it. Develop relationships, quality relationships around your work. Other things that can be helpful in finding meaning. Having something beyond yourself that you care for. If you've got family members, that sort of brings it in itself. But if you're by yourself or you're, another thing is caring for a pet can be really important with that. Having somebody or something that you come home to that needs you. Volunteering, being part of a group where you're giving. Caregiving is another way. But what for you is something that'll help you with finding meaning? So we're running a little short on time and want to do one quick stress management exercise, and it's the simplest one of all. It's just taking deep breaths. When things start really building up and feel out of control, we can tell ourselves, hey, wait a minute, I can control my breathing. So that gives me a beachhead that I can start controlling situations. Because when we start getting panicked, we tend to hyperventilate. So, what I want you to do is we're going to take just a couple of deep breaths. And the way we're going to do it, we're going to inhale for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and hold that for 4 counts. Okay, ready? Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Ex- uh, Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3. Really simple. We call that round breathing, but it's a real simple process that you can do to help keep control. Now, there are many, many other resources, toolkits, all sorts of things that are available to you through your employee assistance program, right? Through Support Link. And remember, you get free sessions, you get, personal, you can do it telephonically, you can do it virtually, you can do it in person, and free, no copay, no deductible, totally confidential. Let us know what we can do to help. So with that, questions about anything that we've talked about, or
Yeah, so we did get one question when you were on your sleep slide. Someone asked, how does the usage of melatonin supplements affect sleep or the sleep cycle?
I'm glad you asked that question. Most people take way too much melatonin, and melatonin is one of there. Any kind of supplement that you're going to get for sleep, I would strongly urge consult your doctor before you start it. Even over the counter, even it seems like melatonin is such a nothing thing, can't harm you at all. But I have had so many people in my office that after they take it for 3 or 4 days, it tends to build up in the bloodstream. And what they find is that, yes, they fall asleep, but in the morning, it's harder and harder for them to wake up, and they find themselves walking through the day in like they're walking through waist deep mud, and just really, really difficult to deal with. So um, even though it's useful in falling asleep, there can be significant things. So with any kind of anything that you take to help you sleep, I strongly urge talk with your primary care physician before you uh, before you start it, so they can help you find out what would be helpful for you. And that's true whether that or Benadryl or any of the other things that people commonly use for that purpose. I strongly urge, because there are other kinds of issues that happen, like for people that have apnea. And apnea is where people stop breathing in the middle of the night. And what happens is people wake up, and what they're doing in waking up is adjusting enough to let themselves start breathing. If someone takes a medication that puts them to sleep sufficiently that they don't wake themselves up in the middle of the night, they don't wake up. And yeah, it can be a fatal mistake. So it can be serious in many, many ways. So thank you for that question. Other questions?
Well, we got another sleep one in. Someone's asking, could using blackout shades be harmful for the circadian rhythm? And is the circadian rhythm important for sleep and stress?
I think just the opposite. It's on a case by case basis, but if someone we're doing shift work, it's probably going to be important for them to adjust their circadian rhythm. If you think about it, you adjust it as you move from time zone to time zone. Let's say you fly to Hawaii, and while you're in Hawaii, you're 6 hours different than you are at home. So your body adjusts to that. Your body would adjust if you were working third shift and had to sleep during the day. In that case, having the blackout curtains, remember I mentioned making it dark, making it cooler, and eliminating noise or masking the noise if you can't eliminate the noise, can be really, really helpful for people doing sleep work, sleeping during the day. So blackout curtains actually could be very helpful And your point about circadian rhythm, and again, it's a case by case depending on the situation. I can't speak to every situation, but if someone is working third shift, then it would be important for them to set up their life so that they are sleeping at the times that they can sleep, while they're on that shift.
All right. So that takes us to time. It's 1:00. So we just want to say thank you so much to Milton for stepping in today and giving a wonderful presentation, a lot of great information, a lot of great resources. So thank you so much, Milton. And thank you
Sure.
to everyone who attended today. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending up a follow-up email with the PowerPoint, the recording, and we'll also be advertising our June Lunch and Learn as well. So thank you so much to everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.